everyone. Thank you for coming. Nice to have a nice full room. Just to let you know, we've got Death the Human Experience and Death Is It Your Right to Choose open for another 3 weeks. So if you haven't been yet, it's a good time to go. We've also got 2 more events coming up. Next Saturday, we've got Dr. John Troyer from the Centre of Death and Society talking about radical life extension. Hang on a minute. When being 300 is the new 40. And then our final event is a death fair on the 5th of March. They're all pay what you think events. So if you'd like to donate at the end, you can either give your envelopes in to us at the door, or there's a donations box by Death Is It Your Right to Choose. This event is being recorded live on YouTube, so you can listen to it again afterwards. But just to let you know, if you wanted to ask any questions that you didn't want to go out, please feel free to come and ask privately at the end. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Brian and Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that better? Well, I could stand up, but not for the whole time. It's really lovely that you've come, and it's lovely to have a great room. I'm Barbara Bloomfield, and this is Brian Sachs, Maggie's partner. And Maggie was a very good friend of mine as well, and there's a lot of Maggie's friends in the room, which is lovely. So why are we doing this event? Partly to raise awareness about assisted dying, partly to help people feel more able to talk about end-of-life choices. It's a really taboo subject. It's a really difficult subject to talk about. And I think that's probably why some people are here. For me, partly as a way of remembering our friend and honouring her memory, and partly to address the question of what is a good death, which I hope you'll be thinking about, because we will have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers and for some discussion. So first of all, I'm going to sort of be in the role of asking Brian questions, really.
Yeah, which is
Brian,
good. I'm just going to say hello, and nice to see loads of people that I know here, and obviously there are people I don't know. Before we got started, I just wanted to say something about the fact that on the blurb on the website is saying basically, which was true, that Maggie had multiple sclerosis for a long time. But I suppose what I want to point out is that people that have multiple sclerosis, it's different for everybody. So I would have much rather it, I suppose, if they would have just said she had an illness or something along those lines, because it's different for every single person. So I'm going to stop.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Brian. So can you tell us a little bit about how you met Maggie? Tell us about your relationship.
Right, first met Maggie at a party in London in 1986, I think, 4 or 5, a long time ago anyway. And then we went out a couple of times to see some bands, and eventually decided that we would get somewhere and move out of London, and ended up in Bristol. That sounds a bit random, but
you've been here many years.
So we moved to Bristol in 1987, end of 87, and we had a daughter in 1988, and then we were living in Bristol, and then we had a son in 1992, and still living in Bristol. Yeah. So.
and they're adults now.
And they're both, yeah.
And how did you first realise, what made you think that Maggie might be ill?
Well, I didn't think she was ill, but I think she did, and she kind of knew she was ill for a long time before she actually went off and got a diagnosis. I'm looking at Claire at the back, because I can remember, I think Claire having conversations with her about this. And I think she was finding she had various symptoms, one of which she was doing an MSc and she was finding it increasingly difficult to concentrate on things. And she used to say to me, God, I'm turning into a man because I can only think of one thing at a time. And that was when she was struggling with that. And then she had a couple of little accidents in the car, and eventually went to the GPs. So I think that was probably maybe 3 or 4 years after she'd first started having difficulties that she finally went along. But part of the reason was that I think she said she thought it was something neurological, and she didn't really want to know.
Yeah,
because she thought it might go away.
Yeah, and being in because Maggie was a health visitor, wasn't she? And among other jobs,
yeah,
so being in that world, it must have made it even more difficult, perhaps, to go to get that diagnosis.
Yeah, all of those. Yeah, that's all true. Yeah, and prior to being a health visitor, she was a nurse, so she nursed people with various illnesses in various stages.
So what would you like to say about the time? Because Maggie had 10 years of knowing that she had MS, didn't she? And what would you say about those years in terms of the quality of your life?
Well, it changed, and certainly for Maggie, her life got a lot smaller, a lot more constricted. I think that was one of the things that she found. Yeah, I suppose that's it really. And things became, it's harder to do things on the spur of the moment, and
it was quite a gradual process, was it?
It was quite a gradual process, yeah.
Did that help, or did that just sort of
I don't know,
just went on and on and on?
I don't know, because I have not having anything to compare it to. I would think it must be, it gives you time to adjust, I think. But on the other hand, there may be other ways. I don't know, is the answer, because I don't have anything to compare it to. Yeah.
So how did no, that's fine. How did the question of assisted dying come up between you? How did you start going down that road?
Well, I didn't. And from fairly early on, Maggie always remembered nursing people who'd had MS, and she was adamant from almost the day she was diagnosed that she didn't want to go down to suffer or to have that way of going.
Yeah.
And so she, from quite early on, used to say, when it gets too much, I want to go to Switzerland, or I don't want to be around, or I'm going to commit suicide and things and that. And so I used to say, well, you can't because the children are too young. And she'd say, right, well, okay, fine. And then she got more serious about it as the illness took hold. And eventually, I suppose I got to the point and I said, well, if you want to do it, then you've got to sort it out with the children. So I wasn't actually very helpful there. And so that was the sort of route it took. So
you wanted her to talk to them about it, to find
out. Yeah, I wanted her for them to understand what her position was. And they were probably a lot more open to understanding than I was. Maybe it's just children.
What makes you say that?
I just think children will tend to be a lot more flexible about things. So your own feeling was no, that was your instinctive feeling, was it? Yeah.
Really
didn't want to
think about it.
No, I didn't want to think about it. No, don't worry about it, because it might not happen. And you might not. These things might not happen. So that was my position for a while.
You know, we've talked a bit in our rehearsal, as it were, about what were the factors that made you able to carry on, you know, because I guess living with somebody with that kind of, those kind of high needs is difficult.
Yeah, but yeah, it is difficult, but lots of people do it, don't they? You just get on with it. And like I was saying, you know, when we were talking about this, I was saying we had, I had a lot of friends around the place, and we had family who helped out. We had a lot of friends that helped us out. We were both, to begin with, in employment. We had enough money. We had somewhere to live. So in lots of ways, we were a lot better off than many people are. Mm. So those are the things that looking back, those are the things I suppose that helped.
Yeah.
Really.
And what would you say, you know, how did you look after yourself? What were the protective factors for you that meant that you could keep going?
I tried to keep fit physically, I think. I think that was amazing. And I went out. I had friends, and I went out and got out of the house. And that was
really important.
Good for me. Yeah. It meant I could carry on going. And up until the last couple of years, then I was able to get away on holidays, which I did do, and went away with the children. So it's just carried on, keep going with your life, like people do. Mm. Yeah.
Now, I do remember that Maggie and yourself being a very popular couple, had lots of people who did want to help, but actually it was quite hard, you know, as one of that circle of people. Sometimes it was quite hard to be with Maggie because she was quite unhappy about her illness. And I think we tried to do a rota, didn't we, at one point, where, you know, so-and-so was coming on the morning and so-and-so was coming on the afternoon. And that did work sort of, but it was quite hard to keep it going, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a very difficult thing to do, because if someone's ill, then they're ill. So you might say, okay, I want to see someone on Wednesday morning, but that's on Sunday, and by the time it gets around to Wednesday morning, they're feeling too ill to see them. Exactly. Yeah. So
I think that's you've hit on.
And I suppose that's the thing I wrote down next to when you said, how would you living with someone with a life-changing illness over 10 years, is that everything's constantly changing.
Yeah, so and unpredictable.
Everything is constant.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit?
But actually, I might as well say, because there's lots of people here that we knew, and that it did. We were lucky that we had a lot of friends, because it did make it more manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You felt supported.
Yeah. Well, I did.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think Maggie did a lot of the time. Most of the time she did.
Yeah. And why did you decide to go to Life Circle? Now that the next door room is from Dignitas, but it's a very similar idea, isn't it?
Yeah. So just go through the process of actually how we ended up going to Life Circle. So several years before Maggie had the assisted death, she had joined Dignitas. Well, which I didn't know, but you join up to Dignitas and you pay like an annual fee. So she joined Dignitas, and then I think she'd been a member of Dignitas for 2 or 3, probably about, I think it was about 4th year, by the time that she had decided that she wanted to go. And so she then got in touch with Dignitas, and she had not, either she'd paid the money and it had gone to the wrong account, or she hadn't paid the money. Anyway, the woman at the other end of the phone, who spoke a bit of English, was really stressed and was saying, you know, you can't come, we're not going to help you out because you haven't paid your fare, and you haven't paid your fee, and you haven't told us why you haven't paid your fee. And this went on for a few weeks, and I was thinking, I don't know what's happening here. So eventually Dignitas seemed to drift off a bit, because the woman wouldn't accept. I don't know. They had some sort of falling out on the phone, and I thought, well, that's probably not going to happen then. And then Maggie then got put in touch with another clinic in Switzerland, which I can't remember the name of, and they sent us all the paperwork and then said you have to have two GPs, you have to have a GP's report, and because, I don't think Maggie will mind people knowing, because Maggie had at some point been prescribed antidepressants, you have to get a psychiatrist's report as well to make sure that you're capable of taking sort of existential decisions, if that's the right word. Yeah. So we had a doctor came up from London and saw me and saw Maggie for a few hours and wrote a report, and then wheels turned slowly. Then a few weeks later, we had a psychiatrist come up and do the same thing. And then we had to get another doctor's report. And in the end, our GP agreed to do it. I'll come on to that later. But he was, I think, putting himself out on a limb a bit there, but he did agree to. So we finally got all the reports, and then we sent the thing off to this clinic. And then they were saying, oh, it'll be, 3 months' time or something like that. And we go, oh, blimey, okay. And then we got a phone call, and they were unable to help because the local police chief in their area, in their canton, had objected. They'd been having too many people through, basically. And so therefore they were tightening the rules and saying only people with a Swiss birth certificate were able to go there. So then we had to start the whole thing again, and someone gave us the Life Circle number or email, and they were very well. They said they said they need to see all the paperwork and everything like that. And that's how we ended up at Life Circle. And
that was a brother and sister.
It's the sister. Doctors? No, the sister's the doctor.
Right.
The brother is just this sort of helps out, picks people up and sorts out accommodation and food and things like that.
So it was actually torturous, wasn't it? If I can use that word.
It was very torturous. It felt it,
process, yeah. Very long-winded.
Very long-winded. Probably took about 18 months, probably, in from when Maggie first sort of got in touch with Dignitas and said, oh, I'm interested in doing this. And I was going, no, not yet. But so it did take a long time. Felt very uncertain. Felt like completely out of control, and you didn't know quite what was going to happen. Whether someone was going to ring up and say, "Okay, you can come in 6 weeks' time," or whether they were going to say, or like what happened is they rang up and said, "You can't come." So it's messy. It's messy because it's not legal. Because there's no legal framework. It's messy.
Yeah,
makes it much more stressful, and
it's a bit like the illness, really, isn't it? It's unpredictable and torturous. Yeah. So that was, and I suppose that's why I'm interested in doing a talk like this and things, is because I just think because there's no legal framework, it makes the whole process a lot more painful. Yeah. And the thing that I think surprised all her friends, tell me if I'm wrong here, was that once Maggie had made the decision to go to Switzerland, her spirits lifted hugely, didn't they?
They did.
Mostly. I mean, she had been depressed and very down about the whole thing. And it was, and we really felt for her. And the thing that she used to say to us repetitively was, I want to run down Gloucester Road. I want to walk down Gloucester Road. If only I could walk down Gloucester Road. And that was the one thing that she couldn't do. And that was so terrible, really, for her, that she couldn't, because she was very active, very much of a walker. So for her friends, I think it was much easier that her spirits lifted because she knew that she could go to Life Circle.
Yeah. And for us.
And for you as well.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. And it did. she was really devastated when she got told that she wasn't going to be able to go to the first place. And then once Life Circle gave her a date, she was just, she was much happier.
So perhaps this is a good moment to play the film.
Yes, I know. So I suppose what I should say is just so it's Maggie up there. So for some people, I hope, well, it's nice to see her, but I hope you don't get upset with it.
Yeah, it might be upset.
Well, actually, I don't care. If you do, you do. I'm just saying you might.
Well, we might as well.
Well, I know I might, yeah, but
we might be up in a puddle on the floor. So
this is a video that Maggie got a friend of ours to make after she knew she was going to Life Circle, as a sort of something to play at her memorial.
Yes,
really, that was the idea of it, I think.
Yes,
and also because I suppose also maybe to play at things like this as well, because she was really. I'll come on to that, but she was annoyed that she had to go to Switzerland.
Yes, she was, and
said
the film was made by Colin Watson, and with makeup artist and hair was Scylla Cole.
I can't see what I've lost my button. Oh, there we go. Is that okay?
I'd like to thank anyone who's come today, but maybe nobody has. And I'm not going to thank by name because I might forget certain people. But I suppose the people I would like to say thank you is to Max and Claire, my children, for being born, and to Brian, who brought them up with me. And thank you for being lovely, lovely, lovely people. And it's been really nice bringing you up, Claire and Max, and seeing how you've become such lovely people. And there's so many other friends and family who've been fantastic and given me and Brian so much support through everything. And also, I suppose I'd like to say thank you to the Spence practice because they've been fantastic. That's just the GP practice, and they've all been really lovely and really supportive through the whole thing of my illness and before. And as to what I've decided to do, I have struggled with this illness for years and years and years, and I am so tired. It just feels so at odds with my personality, this illness. I can't walk, I can't run, I can't cycle, I can't go out. I have spasms and I have pain, and I'm so tired with it. And at the end of it, I think it's about quality. Stop. What's the word? Quality, not, what's the word, survival. Life, it is about quality of life, not just survival. And I've had enough of surviving in this body. And as to what will come after this, I mean, I can't believe there's nothing that we just die and that's it. And there must be something, and I can't. I mean, I have been shopping around for what religion I believe in, and I really haven't decided. I haven't found it, but I do believe in something spiritual. There must be something more than this materialistic world that we live in. And I suppose one thing I do wonder, obviously, what will happen next. But I saw a friend of mine a while ago who I used to live with, and I'd seen her once in the last over 26 years. That's Linny, and she told me that she had this really, really vivid dream one night when in this dream she died and she came back, and what she was told that she was coming back as Mother Earth being a sentient being, and apparently what she was being brought back to was getting rid of everything that is destroying Mother Earth. And that's basically us, isn't it? So I thought, well, I wouldn't mind going for that job if it's still available. I mean, it's a big job. I think you need more than one person doing it. So I'd like the position, but actually saying that, I mean, I wouldn't want to get rid of all my friends and care and loved ones and family, but I would like to get rid of all those people who've actually the kind of really rich people, the people who own corporate organisations, those people who are swooping down at the moment on all our public services in order to buy them up and privatise them. I would just get rid of all those people. And then, because those people have got lots of money, I would say, and they have, I would then do some kind of Robin Hood where I could distribute that money to all those people, the kind of squeeze middle, as Ed Miliband says, and all the people who haven't got enough money. And that means that I'll do something good when I die. Also, I mean, other people have said to me they'd like me to come back. I mean, somebody said they'd like me to come back as a bird, so they can hear me pecking on the window. So maybe I'll do that to begin with. But in the long term, I would go for the job as getting rid of all those rich people who just ruin everything else. And thank you to all my family and friends for being there for me and for giving me such a nice life and supporting me. And I hope you all have a really good life, especially when I've redistributed the wealth. And I hope you enjoy it. That's it. I think another thing I'd like to say is that I'm just really angry that I have to go all the way to Switzerland to die. As somebody who's worked in the health service as a nurse and worked in the voluntary sector, I know what the reality is of being ill in these times. But also, if I could just die at home, I wouldn't be worried about being able to get to Switzerland before I'm too ill, and I would probably still be here. So if I was in Belgium or Holland, I would be able to choose, and my doctor would help me to die at home. But it's not to be yet. But hopefully, when we have a change of government, away from this government that's just so foul, horrible to disabled people, hopefully we'll have a more compassionate government that will be less cruel to disabled people and will allow people to die at home. Oh no, sorry, no, I haven't finished. Sorry, we start again. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose one thing I did say I wasn't going to mention names, but one person I would really like to thank is my friend Maggie that I used to live with in London, and she made me this. It's like an advert, isn't it? She made me this lovely, lovely, lovely bag to put on my night bag, because now I have this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful catheter, which is, well, it means that I don't wet myself anymore. But also I haven't got any cover for this then. But I mean, maybe there's a market there for anyone who wants to develop some new products. But actually, this is what Maggie made me, is put my night bag, which I think is lovely. I could put it out for auction, couldn't I? That's it, lovely, thank you. That's it, thank you. I mean, I suppose the other thing, it is sad that I've got to die, but one thing I'm really pleased about is I won't have to worry about dyeing my hair, getting older, looking more wrinkled, and having to do the recycling. I will never, never, never have to worry about the recycling again and arguing with Brian over how we do it and when we do it. So that would be nice. And finally, I'd like to thank Colin, who filmed this for me. And when it finished, and I said to Colin, was that all right? And he said, Colin said to me, well, Maggie, this is the only time, the last time you will have the last word. If that's what you want to say, that's okay. So that's it. Thank you.
You all right?
Yeah, you all right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think that gives you a real flavour of her personality and her, you know, she made it easy for us really by being so upfront. So yes, she was sentimental and upset at times and very scared and very much in pain, but she did make it easy for us sometimes as well. Can we talk a little bit more? Sorry, do you want to say?
Well, only just to say that is one of the things about the process of assisted dying, which I prefer to call it because it's not quite as doesn't. I think assisted suicide sounds quite sort of sudden and surprising end, whereas assisted death is like a process, and certainly the way Maggie did it was that she did get to say goodbye to everybody and tidy up as many loose ends as she possibly could. So it wasn't the same as someone dying suddenly, and it wasn't the same as someone dying when you don't know they're going to die. It's because she was able to tidy up all those loose ends. It doesn't make any difference in terms of the end result. You still miss them and all the rest of it, but certainly I think it does make it easier, and it is a different process. So that's which is one of the things I don't think assisted suicide is the right. Assisted suicide sounds like you're helping to push someone off a bridge or something like that. Yeah. Whereas it's an assisted dying. It's a much longer process.
Well, I've been thinking about the difference, and I think it's absolutely crucial that the language does reflect the intention. And assisted suicide doesn't sound right, does it? Because Maggie did not want to commit suicide. She didn't want her life to end. What she wanted was not to suffer, and for you, her family and her friends not to suffer. So assisted dying, that sort of takes us on to what sort of help did you get from the NHS with the process?
With the process of assisted dying?
Yeah, if any.
Well, because there's no legal framework, you can't get any help from anyone really, because you're told not to tell. You're told not to mention it to healthcare professionals because they might get in trouble, or you might put them in an awkward situation, or they might have to refer the matter to the police or something like that. So, well, for instance, I rang up the St Joseph's, isn't it, the hospice, and talked to somebody there because I wanted to get some counselling for me and sort of group family counselling, which they obviously know how to do. They've got the expertise to do it, but they weren't able to. I had a long talk with a nurse there, and she said, well, the only way you can access help from us is if you get a GP referral, and can't get a GP referral because your GP can't put anything down on paper saying that they know this is going to happen. But saying that, in our case, the GP practice, and the GP in particular, who was just about to retire and also knew Maggie well and had worked with her, did come round and sat with Maggie for about 3 hours and talked through and tried to persuade her, and sort of tried to suggest a different thing to do, and also referred her to see an MS specialist before she went as a sort of last ditch thing. So,
yeah.
But in terms of helping with chronic, the NHS is not very good at helping with chronic illness in the community.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we haven't quite touched on, is it? The kind of amount of help that she got with the illness.
Yeah, well, there isn't any help, much help. They can help with symptoms sometimes, but
because of her particular kind of MS.
Well, I don't know. Yeah. I think it was partly that in Bristol they didn't operate in the community, so you had to go to visit the place, and after a while, Maggie just didn't want to go. Because she said there's nothing, they can't do anything for me.
Well, I think you've told me that it was more or less a question of you going every year, and then the important person saying, well, it's good to see you again, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah,
and
it did feel a bit like that. Yeah. And they wouldn't actually come out and see you in your home because they didn't have the resources, they said. So
what changes, going through what you have been through, what change would you like to see? What's the most important change for people in the same situation as Maggie?
Well, it's not just the same situation as Maggie. I think anyway. I just feel like there should be a legal framework for people to have the choice have a choice of ending their life if that's what they want to do. That's what I think. Because then I mean, what Maggie said was it's typically English, isn't it? Is that if you're a pet, you're a dog, and you were ill, your family would be able to get the vet to come round and put you to sleep quietly in your bed at home with all your family around you. But because you're a human, they send you trekking halfway across Europe to somewhere you've never been before to die miles away from all your friends and family. And she thought it's typically English, which it kind of is, really. So that's,
yes.
And also I do think that if people know that they are able to access that service, then it takes the pressure off. You know.
Well, Maggie made the point, and you've made it too, which is that she might still be alive if she knew that she could have that service provided at home.
Exactly.
It's a really important point, isn't it?
Yeah. Very, very, very strong point.
What do you think of the other side of the argument that to make a legal framework for assisted dying would lead to old people being bumped off, or, you know? Yeah,
I mean, it's true that there are unscrupulous people around who may want to get rid of people, but the point of electing a legislator is that they are there and get paid money to make laws, and that's what they should be doing. And I suppose I did go up to the debate at Westminster, and it felt like going to somewhere that was incapable of running a modern society. It felt like they weren't in touch with anything. That's how it felt. So I know they lost, so that's maybe why I felt like that. But
it was quite a depressing day for you, I think, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
And did you speak to people on the other side?
Yeah.
So there'd be some religious people, perhaps, and
there were
some disabled people as well.
There were both.
Was that a difficult conversation?
No. It felt like the people that were there supporting it, as one of them said, all had some skin on it, and that they'd all had something, either friends or family, that had gone through the process, and a lot of the people opposing it didn't seem to have that sort of personal connection and were there for more from an ideological point of view. That's how it felt. So yes, I think that there's obviously pros and cons, but you should be able to, it can't be beyond the bounds of possibility to have a law. You've got Belgium, Holland, Switzerland, a few states in America. California's just brought in something to do with assisted suicide, and Canada is now through their courts. That's happening. So it will happen. It feels like sort of legalization of homosexuality or gay marriage. It's something that's going to happen, and just the sooner they get on with it, the better. And then we can get on with everything else.
And when we were thinking about doing this, we talked about what are the elements of a good death. And I think that's quite a hard question to answer. Have you got some? Do you think Maggie had a good death?
I do think, from Maggie's point of view, I think she probably did have a good death. She got time to say goodbye to everyone. She got time to know that lots of people loved her, and lots of people don't get that. And she felt at ease with the way me and the children were, and she died very painlessly. She was really happy, not in a manic way, but she was just relieved not to be waking up all the time worrying about what was going to go wrong next. That was it, really. Yeah. So she was relieved, and sort of came back to being like the person I'd met, really.
Yes, I think that's a real quality in those last weeks. The real personality, the one you saw on the screen, was restored to everybody, wasn't it, to some extent? Yeah. And I was just thinking about the elements of a good death. You know, what you said about being able to tie up loose ends, the avoidance of suffering. I know Maggie had to suffer with her illness, but you know, that does seem to be, when I asked the taxi driver on the way here, what are the elements of a good death? The first thing he said was no suffering. He said, I want to go out like a light.
Mhm.
You know, no suffering, and that's the thing that comes up time on time again, isn't it? In a good death.
Yeah.
Have you got any other thoughts about that?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to say before we kind of open it up?
No, I don't think so. No.
There might be. So we've only just touched on that question of what is a good death, which is, after all, the title of the talk. But has anybody got any questions or contributions? I'm going to keep them fairly short, I expect.
Just curious, does the hospice? I'm going to give you a microphone.
Yeah, we've got a roving microphone here.
Thank you. I'm just curious, does the hospice help out at all? I know they largely deal with people who have cancer.
They can't.
But as far as visiting is concerned, if you don't get visits from BMS?
Well, not without a GP referral, because physically, Maggie didn't have a life threat at that time.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't about to die. So why would the hospice won't come? Because they won't get involved without a GP referral.
Right.
So, because they can't.
And I'm glad you had support from friends.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. And the hospice people, they weren't horrible about it, but it's just that, and it was just, the nurse was very clear. She said, we can't do anything without a GP referral, and you can't get a GP referral because because the GPs will get into trouble, potentially. So because there's no legal framework, don't know if that's true or not. You know.
You said between the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis and Maggie's death, there was around, did you say 10 years?
Yeah.
And do you think Maggie would have been happier during these 10 years if she had known that there was that option when it all got too much to end her life in the way she wished? Do you think that would have helped her get through it?
Well, yes. I mean, she kind of did know, because for the last few years, then we'd agreed that if she wanted out, then I wouldn't stop her. But that was because we had enough money to be able to pay for it, you know, and we had a sort of fairly stable life, so she was able to access that eventually. And yeah, definitely, I think it would have made it a lot easier. Well, like I said, it was quite a torturous process. So if we hadn't had to go through that, if we'd just known that at some point in the distance you could get in touch and, you know, see your GP or see two GPs, whatever you needed to do, and it was within a legal framework, then I think it would make a lot of difference to people. Yeah. And I think probably you'd find that lots of people don't take advantage of it, but obviously there's no way of knowing until you do it.
Hi.
Yeah.
Just thank you so much for sharing your story. I was just wondering, did you have access to any organizations or groups here in the UK that were kind of, or that are currently maybe fighting for the cause of doctor-assisted dying? Because I know Life Service and Dignitas, they're out of country, right?
Yeah.
So did you guys have access to it?
There's, if you look on the internet, there is an organisation called Dignity in Dying, which is campaigning for a change in the law so that if you have a diagnosis of, I think, within 6 months, then you'll die. But then you can be allowed to die. But they've just lost a vote in Parliament, and that's probably not going to happen again for a while. There is an organisation called Friends in the End who will help out. They can't help you do anything, but they just can put you in touch with people. So no, I mean there's a local organisation called where was it? Maggie used to go for counselling, and
Eskimos.
No, not them. Counselling place.
Oh, the Harbour.
The Harbour. Yeah, which was brilliant. They were great.
Yeah.
And offered, Maggie used to go there for counselling, and this was after we couldn't get anything at the hospice. Maggie used to go there. I went there with her a couple of times. I went with the children before and after, and they were really trying to help out.
And that's free counselling for people affected with a life-threatening illness or their friends or family. And I went there as well. We had very good help from the harbour.
Right. So yes, there are bits and pieces around. Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody here? Just coming.
Thank you very much. Fascinating. What help were the harbour able to give you, in the sense, what was the counselling you felt you needed that you weren't getting under the NHS that was helpful?
We didn't get any counselling under the NHS.
Nothing at all? Nothing to discuss?
No.
What? Yeah, right. So what particularly was about the harbour counselling that...
Well, I don't know, because I haven't had counselling before. I don't know much about it. You do.
Yes.
And also I did go and see another counsellor once I knew all this was happening, that someone referred me to, and he sort of gave me practical advice, which was really useful. And the harbour, I think they just talk you through what's going. It's just talking, basically, talk you through what's going on and give you suggestions as to what maybe you could do. So it's not related necessarily. I don't think they're medical experts, but they are counsellors.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, they're psychoanalytically informed counselling organisation. They are very well trained and very good. They're very good at holding pain and loss and impending bereavement, basically. And I remember going there, and I remember saying to the guy, "It's okay, because we've got it all sorted with we're going to go to Switzerland, we're going to go on the train, and we're going to have, it's going to be lots of women there, and we're going to sing songs all the way along." And of course, and I made it sound like a feminist meeting. It was going to be so wonderful, it was going to be so joyous. But of course, as soon as I said it, I sort of just fell into a much more depressed place, because that was just such a fantasy. There was nothing joyous really about any of Maggie's illness, really, apart from perhaps the joy that she had once she knew that she could go to Switzerland. But it was hard. I thought it was very, very hard.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it was a privilege to be involved with helping and looking, and a little bit, to giving a little bit of support. It's a basket of support. And you just do a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. And there were dozens of people that did a little bit. But it was a privilege to do that. But it was hard. It was really hard.
Hi, I'm just a little bit curious. Before Maggie's situation, did you have any strong views on the topic of assisted dying? In other words, is it something that you feel that you don't maybe think about or have an opinion on until you know somebody that's going through it?
I suppose I hadn't really thought about it before, and I think my natural reaction to it would be, well, I think it's an individual's choice. Yeah, without going into details on it. But certainly when Maggie started bringing up, then I was just not. Then I thought, oh no, not ready. But no, I hadn't really. It's not something I thought about, I suppose. Really. Yeah.
Somebody down here.
Sorry, Barbara. I think one thing that was so clear on that film, which Maggie was kind enough to make, was her absolute delight in her children, and that she was leaving them in a place where she felt they would have obviously preferred not to, but that they could live life without her and live a good life without her. And I think that's such a tribute to them. And it was just lovely to hear her clear joy in the lovely people that she felt they were. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, love.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You said how difficult it was, how painful it was through the whole process. Now, assisted dying is illegal in this country. Maggie must have known that by her decision, it ran the risk that you, Brian, could be prosecuted. So how did the two of you or the group, the basket of friends, deal with that risk?
Well, it didn't really. It's not clear. Yeah, if you push someone off a bridge, then you're assisting them. I mean, certainly we've heard stories of, because there's no legal framework, then we've heard stories of people whose children have been told not to go with their parents, or not to push the wheelchair at the airport because it might get recorded on CCTV and they might be done for assisting their parent and things like that. So I don't know. I don't really have an answer to that one. Yeah, we kind of knew it. It felt like it was Maggie's decision. It wasn't like anyone else was doing it. She was doing it. So that was how I approached it. So the answer is, didn't really do any more than that. But I do know that it all goes to, there's no legal framework, so you can't tell anyone. So things like my children getting time off work or college, it's difficult because they can't, if they tell their employers, then are their employers complicit? And if their employers happen to be people in the health service, are they complicit? So what you have to do is start making up stories and not writing things down, and it's wrong. It's not the right way to do things. And because there's no legal framework, I was lucky that I was where I worked, were very sympathetic. They gave me 6 months off leave before, so that I was able to spend time with Maggie. That was fantastic. But lots of places, if you've been working for the NHS, would you have been able to ask for that? I don't know. I mean, I wasn't in a fit state to go in, so I couldn't have gone anyway. But it was, it was very, they're very supportive. So because there's no legal framework, you get all these difficult bits and pieces. And like you're saying, well, how do you avoid those risks? Well, I don't know. You can't, can you, really? It's just, it's unnecessarily complicated. Yeah. And that's why I think it's really important to discuss it and keep it sort of bubbling under a bit, because at some point something will change.
I was just wondering when Maggie, or when yourselves as a family, came to the conclusion of when you'd do it and the timing of it all, or whether it was led by the difficulty that you'd had in getting a service to.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking back. I'm really pleased. I know this probably goes against my argument, but I'm pleased in a way that it was difficult, because it meant it gave me a bit of certainty. Because one of my friends said to me, "You don't want to rush something like this, because you don't want to wake up in a year's time and think, oh God, we shouldn't have done that." So in terms of time, probably three or 4 years, something like that, before it happened. Sorry, I've forgotten what your question was there.
Just how you decided when it would
Right. Well,
be.
it was basically it was all cleared with my children, which was what I wanted Maggie to do, and then nothing much happened for a little while, and then Maggie started getting in touch with places and put the wheels in motion, and then eventually you get a date, and then that's a bit shocking. So that was it, but it wasn't really, we didn't have much control over it, I don't feel. No.
Hi, you talked about being lucky enough to be able to afford to be able to take Maggie to Switzerland. I was just wondering, how much did the whole process cost financially, and whether those costs, if the legal framework was available in the UK, those costs should be paid for by the NHS?
I think in all, it's about £5,000, something like that. I know Life Circle Clinic they charge you extra, which you don't have to pay, but they put it into a fund for people who can't afford to have the process. And what was the second bit about the NHS?
If the legal framework in the UK was in place, do you think it should be available on the NHS for assisted dying?
Well, I think it should be available in the UK. Yeah, and I think it should be available. I don't think you should have to. It shouldn't be reliant on you having enough money to do it. It should be because of your condition, your wishes. Yeah. But a lot of the cost, I suppose, is because, yeah, obviously, A, it's done privately, and B, you've got to travel, and you've got to have accommodation and all the rest of it.
I mean, it's not quite a question, but just on that point, if you look at it from the perspective of the NHS, it would make perfect sense. I mean, the cost of helping someone, the cost of assisted dying would be far less than having to look after and treat that person for the remainder of their life, even if that was like a few months more. So for me, it'd be pretty certain that it should be made available in the NHS. Ethical questions aside, really.
Well, yeah. And
quite a lot of ethical questions in that, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, that this is what the other side would say. You know, that it would become more and more likely that people would be terminated, if you like, to put it that crudely, because they were being a nuisance and
costing a lot of money.
Costing a lot of money.
So, yep, what you're saying might be true, but it's not. It's most people would use that argument, but
I mean, I guess moving on from that, you mentioned a legal framework quite a lot. Could you give us any idea of what kind of your ideal legal framework would be? What would that kind of consist of?
No, not really. I mean, I because there's so many. Sorry, that's no good, is it? Really? I mean, my personal opinion is that you should just be able to have. You've got to have strong safeguards in place, and once you fulfil whatever the criteria are, then you should be able to enter that process. But exactly what it is, and that I don't know, and it's not going to happen like that straight away, is it? It'll start off with people that are ill, and maybe that's how it needs to happen, because it's a sort of going to be a change in the way people think, isn't it? It's going to be a societal change, and it has to happen gradually, possibly. So there, I don't know. You might have ideas. I don't know, other people may.
Has anybody else got any comments or questions? Oh yeah, some more.
I'm just interested how individuals get to the point of feeling that they want to end their life. And I think you both mentioned that she was unhappy. She'd lost things like being able to walk or run. But you see her on the video and she's so articulate, eating still, I presume. Was she able to transfer and move around in the house, or was she?
Yeah.
She was.
Yes, usually, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is, for me, how I felt about it was that Maggie had nursed, and she'd nursed people in the later stages of various illnesses, and she was scared of what would happen next. She didn't feel in control of her body anymore, and she hated that.
Yes.
And that's why she wanted to not have to wake up and think about that. That was it, really, I think.
Yeah, because I feel the same, having been a health professional, and the first person that I cared for was a lady with MS, very long-term MS, and I just find it very interesting in terms of, it's so individual in terms of what a loss for you is. It's so, you can't apply it to anybody else other than
definitely not.
You have to define it for yourself, and that's the difficulty, isn't it, really? Because you see people like Stephen Hawkins who've lost everything, their mobility, their ability to feed or breathe, and for him, he still wants to stay around, but obviously other people don't, and that's the challenge, isn't it, really? So
yeah. But that's the thing, that I suppose that was what I tried to say, but I didn't say it very clearly at the beginning, is that, you know, so lots of people with MS are possibly physically worse than Maggie was, but are very happy to be alive and want to stay alive. And it's different. I suppose it's different for every single person in every different in every situation, isn't it? So.
Before she had MS, did she have thoughts about end of life? And
well, we never.
That you didn't know, not specifically.
I don't think it's, you know, might have had the odd flippant comment about, you know, knock me off if I can get into that state, or something like that. But not that I remember. No.
Yeah, thank you. It's something you have conversations with your spouse, don't you? But again, it's difficult unless you're in the actual situation. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hiya. I knew Maggie quite well. I was good friends with Claire, her daughter. Sorry, it's been quite emotional watching that video again. I just think what I found, or Maggie's personality for me was always really bright and bubbly, and it was just her body just didn't match that towards the end. So I think that's what it was for me.
Cheers, Emily. Right.
Hi, you mentioned a little bit about the other side of the argument. Obviously, you're very pro-assisted dying. The other arguments say that palliative care should be more invested in, that we should look at those options. And obviously, you're saying you couldn't discuss with NHS healthcare professionals your situation. Did you look into palliative care at all? Was anything like that discussed?
No, I when you say we did discuss with, we didn't get any counselling help from the NHS, but we got help, and we get district nurses, and there's so many different bits, district nurse, continence nurse, this nurse, that nurse, MS nurse, there's all these different bits of the NHS that you have to sort of navigate your way around, and they're all on the end of different phones, and they'll ring you back or they won't ring you back. And it's very piecemeal. It really felt very disjointed. And I don't think palliative care, everyone should be entitled to the best palliative care, but it's got nothing to do with whether you want to have an assisted dying or not. They're not related. I know people say they are, but they're not. You should be able to get the best palliative care, but if you then decide that you've had that you've had enough and you want to die, you should be able to die. They're not related. So we didn't get palliative care because Maggie wasn't actually dying. I'm not sure. I think that's what palliative care is, it? Yeah.
You can get it if you have struggling with symptom management of pain and that kind of thing. Palliative care can help with that.
Okay, yeah, we've got that. Yeah, but it's the NHS for dealing with chronic things in the community is hard because it requires a lot of money, a lot of resources, and it's not always there, I think. And even if it was, I still think you should get the best palliative care, but you should also have the right to stop when you've had enough. But I know that's one side of the argument.
Carrying on from the palliative care question, do you think that if assisted dying was introduced in this country, that alongside that there should be improved palliative care as well? Because otherwise, if there's sort of a difference between the two, people might decide to move to, for example, assisted dying if they felt that the palliative care wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, easy enough to say, isn't it? Because palliative care costs a lot of money, but yes, you should have both options. Well, they're not sort of alternative options, are you? You want the best palliative care while you're alive, but if you've then had enough and you've realised that you don't want to be around anymore, then you shouldn't have to carry on being around. That's what I think. I'm not sure.
Oh, there's somebody over here.
Hi, this on? Yeah. You talked about the legal framework, and listening to Maggie's story individually, it comes across to me that it seemed the right thing for her. And I'm sure if she was here today, maybe she would say the same thing. I'm just wondering about the ethical framework, because that's where the difficulty comes in, isn't it? Because if you think of the principles of ethics around this, you've got do good, do no harm, and then you've got social justice and autonomy. And in terms of autonomy and her being able to make that choice, it's really important. But then thinking of the social justice and the thin edge of the wedge scale, on a grand scale, I've nursed a lot of vulnerable patients, and sometimes the family is not that supportive, and that therein lies the problem within a legislative framework, doesn't it?
Yep.
So
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't know how we can get around that, because and I also have got a lot of friends who are doctors who just would feel very uncomfortable being involved in assisting dying, because it goes against the ethical framework that you sign up to when you become a medic. So.
Right, well, they shouldn't have to do it then. No one's. I don't think you should have to make anyone do it. I think there are probably plenty of doctors around who would not have an ethical problem with it, as long as the situation's set up properly. But no, it's not easy, and you have got to have you've got to have safeguards. But other places are doing it, so I don't see any reason why we can't.
I know in Oregon in 1997, I think they introduced it, and the assisted deaths went up by about 300%. But just touching on the gentleman's, when he was talking about the NHS, I know what happened there was actually because the NHS has a finite budget, that they ended up taking some of the money from cancer drugs to pay for assisted dying. So I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying there are some really big questions that need to be asked in the wider context beyond the individual.
I think you're right. I mean, a situation that could come about is that, let's say, the relatives of a very elderly person or somebody who's perhaps dying want them to die, but they don't get through the assessment. It is an ethical minefield, really, isn't it?
It is an ethical minefield, but I don't think the answer is to stick your head in the sand and do nothing, because at the same time as this process is going on, you've got a medical process going on, which means that many more people are being kept alive who wouldn't have been kept alive, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. So it's not going to go away, this question. It's just going to come back more and more and more. And I kind of think we pay for a legislature and we elect them, and they should do something about it. Easier said than done, obviously, but yeah. But you're right. It potentially is an ethical thing, but it takes a bit of courage, I think, for them to make that leap. But obviously, there probably will be cases when things go wrong. But I don't know. I don't know.
No, I don't.
It's not easy.
I think it's trying to get to a position where the potential to do more harm is outweighed by the benefit, and I think maybe we're not at that stage yet.
Right.
I don't know whether a good legislation would be the answer to that. I don't know.
Well, I think it would, because I think it is elsewhere, but that's my view.
So shall we say thank you very, very much to everybody for coming. We've put some leaflets on some seats, but not all. And if you wanted to contact either of us about, a personal situation or something like that, I've left some little cards on the seats, little blue cards. So please do.
Thank you.
No.